The war between humanity and the Zalthari had burned for 7 years, a slow, grinding conflict across shattered stars, and Captain Elias Rowe had lost almost everything to it. His home colony was glassed in the first invasion wave. His brother died screaming over an open channel, and his name was carved into the Zalthari threat archives as a priority kill. The Zalthari were not insects as propaganda claimed. They were tall, silver-skinned beings with elongated eyes and neural crests that glowed when they felt strong emotion. They were brilliant tacticians and merciless conquerors, and their matriarchs commanded fleets with absolute authority. Elias knew all this as he moved through the wreckage of a ruined orbital nursery station. His strike team had been wiped out minutes earlier. Plasma burns still glowed along the walls, alarms wailed in alien frequencies, and the mission objective had already failed. He was bleeding, his rifle was cracked, and extraction was impossible. Then he heard the sound. Not an alarm, not weapons fire, but crying, small and broken and terrified. Elias followed it through a collapsed corridor until he found the source, a Zalthari child trapped beneath twisted metal, its bioluminescent crest flickering weakly, its breathing shallow and erratic. His first instinct was rage. This species had murdered billions. They had taken everything from him, and here lay the offspring of his enemy, helpless and afraid. His hand tightened on the trigger. Then the child looked at him, not with hatred, but with fear and confusion. Elias cursed under his breath and dropped his weapon. The metal beam crushing the child was fused to the deck, warped by explosion heat. Elias braced his shoulder against it, pain flaring as torn muscles protested and pushed with everything he had left. The beam shifted just enough. The child screamed, then went silent as Elias pulled it free and wrapped it in his thermal cloak. The Zalthari physiology was fragile at this age, adapted for hive safety, not battlefield chaos. Elias scanned for hostiles, none came, the station was dying, and so were they if he stayed. He activated his emergency beacon and prayed the Zalthari rescue ships would ignore it. They did not. A Zalthari patrol cruiser latched onto the station within minutes, boarding parties flooding the corridors. Elias stood with empty hands raised, the child cradled against his chest. Weapons locked on him instantly, dozens of them. The soldiers froze when they saw the child. One of them hissed in shock and spoke rapidly into a comm node. Elias did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Minutes later, the air itself seemed to hum, and the soldiers parted as a towering figure entered, her neural crest blazing gold and crimson, her presence crushing. The matriarch, mother of the child, leader of the Zalthari war armada, and the architect of humanity's suffering. She stared at Elias, at the human enemy kneeling amid the ruins, holding her child like it was precious. The station alarms finally died, leaving only silence and breathing. The matriarch approached slowly, every step deliberate, her guards tense and ready. Elias lowered the child gently onto the deck and backed away, hands still raised. The child crawled toward its mother and clung to her, sobbing softly, its crest flaring with relief. The matriarch knelt, inspecting the injuries with swift efficiency, then looked back at Elias, her eyes unreadable. She spoke, and the station translators flickered to life. "Why did you not kill my offspring, human?" Elias swallowed and answered honestly, "Because it was a child, not a soldier, and I'm not the monster you think I am." A ripple of tension passed through the Zalthari soldiers. The matriarch studied him for a long moment, then rose, her crest pulsing slowly. "You spared what we would not," she said. "Your kind has slaughtered our young as well." Elias met her gaze despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Then maybe this war has already taken too much from both of us." Silence followed, heavy and charged. The matriarch turned to her guards and issued a command. They lowered their weapons. "This human is not to be harmed," she declared. Elias almost collapsed in disbelief. Elias was taken aboard the matriarch's flagship, not as a prisoner, but not as a guest either. The corridors were vast and organic, humming with alien life. Every eye followed him. The child watched him from behind its mother, curiosity replacing fear. In the matriarch's chamber, Elias was offered medical aid, his wounds treated by drones that worked with unsettling precision. When it was done, the matriarch faced him again. "You saved the life of my child," she said. "Such a debt cannot be ignored in our culture." Elias laughed bitterly. "Then end the war, return what you stole, let us live." The matriarch's crest dimmed slightly. "Peace is not decided by one life, even one as precious as my own offspring." She stepped closer, towering over him. "But I must understand you, human. I must see the kind of being who defied hatred when no one was watching." Elias frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "you will remain here for a time, not as a captive, but as proof that humans are more than the monsters we believed." The weight of her words settled over him. Weeks passed aboard the flagship. Elias learned their language, their customs, their grief. He learned that the matriarch had lost 3 children to human raids, that this surviving child was her last. The child grew attached to him, following him through the halls, mimicking his gestures, laughing in strange musical tones. Whispers spread through the fleet of a human who saved a Zalthari child, of a matriarch who spared an enemy. When the fleet finally withdrew from the border systems, it was called a tactical repositioning, but Elias knew better. On the day he was released, the matriarch stood before him one final time. "The war is not over," she said, "but you have changed its future. When my child rules after me, they will remember the human who chose mercy." Elias nodded, then asked them to remember that mercy is a strength, not a weakness. The matriarch inclined her head, a gesture of deep respect. As Elias was returned to human space, he carried no weapons, only a truth forged in fire and choice, that even in endless war, one life spared could echo across galaxies, and that sometimes the child of your enemy is the key to ending 1,000 years of hatred. The human frontier world of Calderis Prime had not seen a Zalthari vessel in over a year. The withdrawal of their fleets had given humanity breathing room, but not peace, and Captain Elias Rowe knew better than to trust silence in a galaxy shaped by war. He had returned to service reluctantly, promoted against his will, praised as a hero he did not feel like. His name whispered in command halls as the man who changed the enemy's behavior without firing a shot. Elias lived with the memory of bioluminescent eyes watching him from behind a towering silver form, with the memory of a child who laughed in alien tones and tugged at his sleeve as if war had never existed. That memory was why he froze when the early warning sirens screamed across Calderis Prime. Zalthari's signature detected, single vessel, matriarch class. Panic rippled through the planetary defense grid. Civilians fled to shelters, weapons platforms powered up, and admirals barked orders filled with fear and fury. Elias stood in the command center staring at the holographic projection of the incoming ship, its profile unmistakable, elegant and terrible, the same flagship that had carried him away from death. She had come personally, demanding to see the human. The message repeated across all channels in flawless Terran standard, amplified by translators refined since their last encounter. "I request immediate audience with Elias Rowe, saver of my child. If he is harmed, this system will burn." Silence followed the transmission, thick and suffocating. Every eye in the room turned to Elias, some filled with awe, others with suspicion, a few with barely concealed hatred. "You cannot go," one general snapped. "She is manipulating you. This could be a trap." Elias exhaled slowly. "If it were a trap, she would not have come alone, and she would not have warned us." He stepped forward before anyone could stop him. "Prepare a shuttle. I will meet her." The docking bay trembled as the Zalthari flagship latched onto the station, its organic hull interfacing with human steel in a union that felt profoundly wrong. Elias walked alone across the bay, unarmed by explicit request, every step echoing. The air shifted as the matriarch emerged, her crest glowing with controlled intensity rather than rage, and beside her walked the child, taller now, steadier, eyes bright with recognition. The child broke formation and ran toward Elias, wrapping elongated arms around his waist, emitting a joyful trill that echoed across the bay. Weapons across both species hesitated, unsure how to process the sight of an enemy commander embracing an alien child. The matriarch inclined her head deeply, a gesture Elias now understood as one of profound respect. "You have been well, human," she said. Elias smiled despite himself. "I was hoping never to see your ships over one of our worlds again." The matriarch's crest pulsed softly. "Hope is why I am here." They met in a sealed chamber overlooking the planet below, the stars beyond framed in reinforced glass. The child sat between them, observing, listening, learning. "My offspring will soon undergo the rite of continuance," the matriarch began. "Our leaders are shaped not only by strength, but by memory." Elias nodded, unsure where this was going. "Among the memories required is one of mercy freely given," she continued, "one that challenges instinct and hatred." Elias felt a tightening in his chest. "My child has chosen you as that memory." The words struck harder than any weapon. "You want me to what?" Elias asked carefully. "To stand before the Zalthuri High Conclave," the matriarch said, "to tell them why you saved a life that our war demanded you take." Elias laughed softly, incredulous. "They will kill me before I finish the first sentence." "They will not," she replied, "because my child will stand beside you, and my authority will shield you." Elias looked at the child, who met his gaze with calm certainty beyond its years. "Why me?" Elias asked quietly. "Because you are the proof that our war narrative is incomplete," the matriarch said, "and because my child trusts you more than any other being." The journey to the Zalthuri home system was unlike anything Elias had imagined. Worlds grown rather than built, cities that pulsed like living organisms, skis filled with drifting luminous constructs instead of ships. Whispers followed him everywhere, not of hatred, but curiosity. The human, the enemy, the savior. When Elias stood before the high conclave, the chamber stretched vast and cathedral-like, dozens of matriarchs and patriarchs arrayed in bioluminescent splendor, their combined presence overwhelming. The child stepped forward first, crest shining bright and steady. "This is the human who chose me," the child said, voice clear, when every reason told him not to. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elias took a breath and spoke, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a man. "I did not save your child to end a war," he said. "I did not save them for peace or politics. I saved them because in that moment, they were just a child trapped and afraid, and I remembered what it felt like to be helpless." He spoke of loss, of rage, of the cost of becoming what war demands. "I learned that day," he continued, "that if we only ever see enemies, then war has already won." Silence followed, deep and thoughtful. The conclave deliberated for 3 full cycles. Elias waited in isolation, guarded yet unharmed, unsure if he would ever see home again. When the doors finally opened, the matriarch stood before him once more, her crest blazing brighter than ever. "The conclave has spoken," she said. Elias braced himself. "A ceasefire will be enacted across all contested systems, exploratory talks will begin, and the rite of continuance will record your act as foundational memory." Elias closed his eyes, overwhelmed. "This does not erase the past," the matriarch continued, "but it alters the future." On the day Elias departed, the child embraced him once more, longer this time. "You will come back," the child said, "not as enemy." Elias smiled, as friend. As his ship left the Zalthuri system, news spread across human space, disbelief turning slowly into cautious hope. For the first time in generations, weapons went quiet along the border. And in the quiet, something fragile and powerful took root. Not trust yet, not forgiveness, but the understanding that enemies are learned and mercy can be taught. And somewhere among the stars, a future leader remembered the human who chose to lift rubble instead of pulling a trigger, carrying that lesson forward like a flame against the dark. The ceasefire held longer than anyone expected, not because treaties were signed or fleets dismantled, but because both sides hesitated, as if afraid to break something fragile and newly born. Elias Rowe returned to Calderis Prime a changed man, not celebrated this time, not paraded before cameras, but quietly reassigned as a liaison, a role that did not exist before mercy forced it into being. He spent his days speaking to diplomats who did not trust him and soldiers who resented him, men and women who had lost families and could not understand why saving one alien child mattered more than their dead. Elias never argued with their pain. He carried his own too well for that. Instead, he told them the truth, that the child did not erase the war, but it stopped one more generation from inheriting it unquestioned. Across the stars, within the living cities of the Zalthari, the child grew, guided by matriarch tutors and ancient traditions, yet shaped most deeply by a memory no ritual could overwrite. The memory of rubble, darkness, fear, and a human voice that spoke gently instead of striking. During the rite of continuance, the child stood before elders and peers alike, recounting the moment not as weakness, but as revelation. The human did not ask who I was, the child said, or what I would become. He only saw what I was then, and that changed me. Among the conclave, debates shifted subtly, doctrines softened at their edges. Words like inevitability and extermination were replaced with caution and consequence. Some resisted, clinging to old certainties, but even they could not erase the image of a human holding a Zalthari child while surrounded by fire. Years passed, and with them came joint patrols along once blood-soaked borders, silent at first, weapons powered but unused, crews watching each other with wary curiosity. Elias served aboard one such patrol, standing on a viewing deck beside a Zalthari officer who had once fought against him. "Strange galaxy," the officer said, crest flickering faintly. Elias nodded, "Stranger than we ever imagined." News reached them one cycle later. The matriarch was stepping down, her child ready to ascend sooner than expected, the conclave citing unprecedented unity among the younger generations. Elias felt the weight of that announcement settle over him like gravity, pride tangled with fear. He was invited, not demanded this time, to attend the ascension. Standing once more beneath the vast chamber lights, Elias watched as the child he once carried now stood tall, crest radiant, voice steady. "I inherit a galaxy shaped by war," the new ruler said, "but I choose to shape it with memory. I remember the human who refused to become what war demanded, and I carry that refusal with me." The chamber resonated not with applause, but with acceptance, a deeper sound, older and more powerful. Afterward, the new ruler approached Elias privately, no guards, no ceremony. "You taught me something," they said, "that strength is not proven by who we destroy, but by who we protect." Elias smiled softly, "You taught me the same thing." When Elias finally retired, he did so on a quiet world far from borders, planting trees where trenches once scarred the land, watching children of many species play without knowing the cost of the peace they inherited. History would debate his actions, some calling him naive, others calling him the turning point, but Elias did not concern himself with legacy. He cared only that somewhere among the stars, a leader remembered mercy not as an exception, but as a foundation. And that when future wars threatened to rise, as they always would, there would be at least one voice that asked a different question. Not how do we win, but who do we become if we do?